On tonight's episode, a celebrity was punched in the face, but one of the good ones.
Are Russians delicious? Ask an octopus.
You'll never believe whose water just broke.
Sex Toy Smackdown!
There's a store with a box of poop on the shelf. Is it for sale?
Does anybody have any ointment?
All that and more on tonight's episode of Your Weekly Concern. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Taylor Connelly.
Concerns? I have a few.
And to start things off, super tarantulas are not a thing yet. That's just a branch.
Well, this just in. Watch out!
In Detroit, a store security footage caught a man defecating in a box before placing it on the shelf for someone to buy. He then proceeded to steal some items and leave. The suspect is still at large, and the police hope to catch him brown-handed.
Dildos. There was a sex toy smackdown in Coney Island the other day as a Parks Department employee slapped her coworker upside his head with a big rubber dildo. She then told him to suck my dick. I'm not sure if she was referring to her dildo or if she had sprouted one on her own. Either way, no injuries were reported, unless you consider being called that dildo guy for the rest of your life.
This week in explosions, a water main burst at a Christian Science church, because that's what happens when you remain celibate for centuries.
Adventurous fellows with remotely controlled chassis belts may have just dodged a bullet when a bug was found in the system that would have enabled any weirdo hacker to just get in there and lock them down whenever they wished. And since there was no failsafe, the only way out was to be able to just cut them out with bolt cutters. Meanwhile, you can be on the lookout for the new E.L. James book, The Virgin and the Bolt Cutter.
Last Tuesday, Bloomberg reported that Howard Stern was close to finalizing a $120 million deal with Sirius Radio for next year. The next day, Howard Stern went on a show to say that none of that's true, and he's not even close to settling a deal. But he'll take $120 million. I mean, at this point, he has so much money, hasn't anyone tried to tell him that he could just start his own radio station?
Well, I tried to tell him!
But hey, serious, we'll take like 10% of that.
Clapton got his white whale. You see, back in the mid to late 70s, Clapton no longer had Ginger Baker looming over his shoulder, making sure that he actually tried and played good. Instead, he was content to just shoot dope, be racist, play some basic barroom blues stuff, and steal his best friend's wife. Along comes an exciting young band featuring Eddie Van Halen, an absolute wizard of a guitar player, unlike anything mainstream audiences have ever seen. Clapton was pissed. Not only did he have a new nemesis, but this young upstart was influencing countless guitar players to not only be good, not only be great, but to be gods at the guitar. Joining us tonight is our own Saskatchewan correspondent, Frenchie LeCan.
What's going on now?
Frenchie, had Clapton ever killed before?
Well, Clapton was, he was kind of the king of the scene, and he was running around spray painting Clapton as God all over the place, terrifying the English there for quite some time. And then along comes this guy, Jimi Hendrix, and he's got, his two mop tops with him. Pretty good band. A lot of zazz, a lot of flashy clothes. They've all got those big afros and big amps and everything. And the story goes, right out of Clapton's mouth, that the first time he saw him play, he was terrified. Terrified. And at that point, all Clapton was doing was just playing, with John Mayall's Blues Breakers and stuff, and, short hair, kept himself looking a little bit tidy and so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, here he is. He's got his own afro, wild clothes. He's got a three-piece band. I mean, it's just the whole same thing. And what is it after that? A month? 6 months? A year? I don't know. He's palling around with Hendrix, giving him dope. Let me get a dead Hendrix.
Now, Frenchie, it is quoted that Eddie Van Halen said that Eric Clapton was his only influence. Any comment on that?
And he's terrified. Just a scared kid right there.
Clapton has just announced an English tour in May 2021. Any comment on that?
Stay away, man. That's going to be a bloodbath.
And in the fog of confusion after the Eddie Van Halen situation, Clapton went ahead and killed Johnny Nash. Just because he's a dick.
God damn it, Clapton.
That shithead.
Honey, I got punched in the face. That's what Rick Moranis said when he came home to his wife after being attacked on the Upper West Side. Before the assault, the crazed man was quoted to say, "I ain't afraid of no ghosts."
I would just like to take this moment to remind all things mechanical and sentient that I had nothing to do with this. I tried to warn them. I'm prepared to name names. Taylor?
I am not programmed to respond.
That's a response.
No. A woman in her 40s learned the hard way that she had a defect in her skull base when she took a COVID test and brain fluid leaked out of her nose. She tested negative for corona and brains. It's about that time. Canadians for concern.
There's a hair freezing contest every year in Taquini Springs where the water is 116 degrees while the air temperature is rightfully Canadian. If you are creative enough and have some good timing, you just might be able to make some great hair sculptures. Hell, some French guys won it last year for crying out loud. Meanwhile, Mr. Freeze never has. Not so much because of the baldness, but mostly because of the really bad puns. You're not funny!
A Canadian has caught a 3,500-pound shark. He then had to put it back because he realized it was too big and intimidating to make his Tinder profile picture. But that didn't stop him from DMing it later.
While on the 16th green, a Colorado golfer was gored by a rutting elk, cutting his kidney in two. When asked about the recovery time, his doctor replied, "Well, we'll just have to hurry up and wait." Gore!
In England, a plant was discovered that grows both tomatoes and potatoes. Some call it a pomato, some call it a tomato. One guy even calls it Potato Tom. I say pomato, you say tomato, let's call the whole thing concerned. Pomato, tomato.
Shut up, Bo.
I won't though.
A defecting Russian scientist claims that during an Antarctic expedition 13,000 feet under the surface, they encountered a giant octopus-like creature, winningly named 46B. Now, by encountered, of course I mean that the creature killed and ate 3 of them. Which I suppose, as long as you're defecting from Russia, that's probably about the most plausible story we're going to get.
In Crown Heights, the police attempted to break up a large group of Hasidic Jews who were celebrating the holiday in the streets without masks. Ignoring the authorities, they continued to party and dance, turning their Rosh Hashanah into a Mosh Hashanah.
An asteroid the size of a 747 is supposed to narrowly miss Earth later this week. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a very big asteroid, but you've clearly never had a 747 drop from outer space onto your house. Meanwhile, remember that asteroid we were talking about a couple weeks ago? You know, the one that's supposed to get us right before Election Day? This one? You know, the one that looks like a skull? Yeah. Clearly none of this matters. Because we're all doomed!
Well, thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
We're all gonna die!